my name is Kayla McBride. I work for FranklinCovey, and I'm presenting our workshop today, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Family. So welcome. This workshop is based off of kind of the renowned author, Dr. Stephen R. Covey. And we like to start with a quote from Dr. Covey. So just take a moment and to read what's on the screen. And if you're not able to look, I'll read it out loud. Dr. Covey said that family is the most important organization in the world. And today we're going to be focusing on how to lead the most important organization in the world, which is our families. And at FranklinCovey, we don't define family. Each of you get to define your own family. And we know that families come in all shapes and sizes. They're all unique. And we honor every kind of family that there is out there. So please keep in mind, as we use the word family, you define what family means for you and your people, right? As we kind of get started, we like to, if you're open to it, start thinking about a word that would define a personal strength of yours. So if you don't mind, we'd love for you to put that in the chat, maybe just your name and a one-word strength. And if you want to have it through the lens of maybe a caregiver, you could. And as people are doing that, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself so you kind of have an understanding of who your facilitator is. So as I mentioned, my name is Kayla. I am from Montgomery County. I'm from Gaithersburg, actually. I went to school in Montgomery County. I taught in Montgomery County. I'm a former teacher, and I most recently, before this position, was teaching in Loudoun County. My husband relocated for work, and so we did officially move over into the state of Virginia, which I never thought I would do. That's a little bit about me. I have a 1.5-year-old, and I have another one that will be here in January. And so this work around families is very important to me. And I know that I've learned a lot in the last 1.5 years, and I have a lot more to learn. And so I love facilitating these workshops because I always pick something new out of this. So Molly is telling us that one of her strengths is that she is caring. Thank you, Molly. I can sense that through the screen. All right, so let's start with the basics. Today is kind of an opportunity to experience this content as a family member. And so we all have different roles in our life, and I would really encourage you to think about how and invite you to think about how this will apply to your own family. And Giovanna is flexible. Thank you. And so to get started, as we think about this idea of building a nurturing family culture, we're going to think about kind of family basics and how to build a highly effective family culture. And then we'll dive into the first of a few of those habits. Okay. So we'll start here. Up on the screen, you're going to see these 4 basic needs that we will use to support our conversation for this beginning part. And so these fall into these 4 categories. We have kind of this physical, emotional, mental, and sort of like a spiritual well-being. And these are what we call the 4 dimensions of a human being, right? And so when we think about this and we look at this a little bit closer, we like to say that we're working towards creating a vision of what an effective family can look like. So as a reminder, FranklinCovey, my company, nobody defines your family or creates your family. The ownership is with you, and it's your own family's journey. And we really want to be able to become effective families through these 7 habits. I invite you to think about this, right? So what common challenges do families face in today's world? Being a parent is not easy. Being a parent today is not easy. I'm sure that there have always been challenges, but it does seem to be a unique time to be a parent or a caregiver in today's world. Maybe just to kind of get us warmed up, I'd love in the chat if anybody doesn't mind thinking about some common challenges and type those in the chat that some of us face. Peer pressure. Gosh, and it seems to be starting really early, huh? Yeah. The social media. Yup. Goodness. My children are 7 and 9. Oh, Lloydette, it's early. Yeah, devices. Overall external factors, the news. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't even know that was a reaction, that you could do the dart thing, the target thing. That's funny. Yeah, devices in general and all that comes around with it. Thank you everyone for sharing. Safety in schools. Yeah, there's a lot of heavy challenges that families are facing, and sometimes it can feel really overwhelming. And so I love that you're here, because it means that you're kind of trying to take some control of those challenges, and that is always a good thing. Let's talk about this, right? You're here for the 7 habits of highly effective families. So habits are what you repeatedly do. And specifically, these 7 habits will help us create solutions to some of those challenges we've discussed. I am not going to sit here and tell you that what you hear today is going to solve the world's problems, but they will certainly be a tool in your parenting toolbox that you did not have before. So your child might be at a Leader in Me school. They might not be at a Leader in Me school. Regardless, it doesn't matter. We kind of want to talk about what these 7 habits that this person keeps talking about. Why are they ordered in such a way? And they do have a very specific order, and they can help us through some of the challenges that we face, both as individuals and as families. And these habits are an expression of our character. And so we develop our character as we live these 7 habits. So we're going to watch just a short clip to get us kind of all in this on the same level playing field of what are these 7 habits and what is kind of this order to them. Okay. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and maybe Molly, you just give me a thumbs up in the chat if everything is playing correctly. Okay.
Was there supposed to be an audio? We're not hearing anything.
There should be. We tested it right before, so let me see why that's not playing. Let's try one more time. And I'm going to go back one slide. Let's reshare again. Share sound, optimize.
Okay, there you go.
To achieve lasting effectiveness, we go through a natural process of development, symbolized by the maturity continuum. Dependence is the lowest level of maturity. When we are dependent, we need others to take care of us, to come through for us, to give us our sense of worth and security. Dependence is the attitude of you. I need you to take care of me. The first 3 habits help us move from dependence to independence, which is a higher level of maturity. Habit 1, be proactive, means that we develop our own power to choose our actions, responsibility for our choices. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind, means that we define the kind of life we want to lead. It's creating clear objectives and laying out a vision or blueprint for what matters most to us and who we want to be. Habit 3, put first things first, is where we plan and accomplish our goals so that our lives reflect the vision we have for ourselves. Learning and regularly practicing these first 3 habits helps us to win the victory over self, attaining what we call the private victory. Where dependence is the attitude of you are responsible for me. Independence is the attitude of I'm responsible for myself. I can choose my future and make it happen. To be highly effective, there is another level of maturity, interdependence, which is the attitude of we. It's where we work together creatively with others to achieve far more than any one of us could accomplish on our own. Achieving interdependence is the goal of habits 4 through 6. Habit 4, think win-win, is the attitude of seeking mutual benefit in our relationships and interactions with others. Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood, is the ability to truly listen to others, to understand and honor their perspectives and realities. It also means to communicate our own views in a way that is both open and respectful. Habit 6, synergize, is the process of working with others in a collaborative and creative way to achieve new and better results. When we think and act interdependently, we win what is called the public victory. Without sufficient independence, people will not have the character and self-mastery to work interdependently with others. That is why habits 1, 2, and 3 come before habits 4, 5, and 6. They focus on self-mastery, on developing the strength of our own character. Private victories precede public victories. Habit 7, sharpen the saw, surrounds all the other habits and is the habit of renewal. It's the habit that gives us the power to consistently carry out the other habits in our lives. It's a pattern of daily private victories that creates an upward spiral of increasing effectiveness that lifts up to new and more rewarding levels of understanding and living.
Great. So be in the chat or feel free to come off mute. Did anybody pick up on sort of the reason for why the habits are placed in this order? So the habits are placed in this order sort of because they build off of each other, and there's an intentional order to how we tackle them. And specifically today, we're going to be focusing in on habits 1, 2, and 3, which all make up the private victory. Those all have to do with kind of ourselves and us independently. And in our follow-up session on November 27th, we'll be able to dive into habits 4, 5, 6, as well as habit 7. Now that we kind of have a basic understanding of what those habits are, and I'm saying very basic, we'll get into them a little bit more. We want to explore a little bit about what these habits look like for a family, because the combined habits of individual family members are what create the family culture. And so that's why it's important for individual family members to have a concrete understanding of habits 1, 2, and 3, because collectively that makes your family culture. Right? So, we don't have to come off of mute or do anything really, but I just want you to take a moment and think about you and your family today, right? On the left, we have family culture number 1, family culture number 2 is over here on the right. And just think for a minute, where would you maybe place yourself, knowing that in real life, most families are ebbing and flowing sometimes sometimes every few minutes, right? Again, for those of you who joined late, I have a 1.5-year-old. So I find myself often shifting between family 1 and 2 up at the top. And just kind of give yourself a moment to reflect. I'm wondering if there's 1 or 2 that's jumping out. No, that's real, right? I lose my temper and then I'm like, okay, never mind, stay calm and apologize, right? Being a parent now is very much, there's a lot of parenting gurus out there now too, right? It's hard. So here's our promise to you. Dr. Covey says that if you apply even one of the habits today, you will see immediate results. But the cool thing is that it really is a lifetime adventure. And so what we like to say is think about today and think about the one thing that you can kind of take away from today. And then, just make a promise to yourself to continue working on this journey. And again, the individual habits of a family member are what contribute to the family's culture. And that's why we think this is so important. So here's what we like to say though. Maybe you are not totally satisfied with your current family culture. Either way, we can work to improve it, right? Maybe you like it, maybe you don't like it, but we want to kind of think about this idea of paradigms first, because paradigms are very, very powerful, and paradigms are the lens through which we see the world. Okay, so we're going to do a quick little activity here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to think about how and why paradigms are so powerful, And then we'll dive into some of our habit work after that. Let's try that this way.
So much of what we do in our personal lives and at the office is the result of the paradigms we hold. And what we do, in turn, affects the results we get.
Thanks for coming to the meeting today, everyone.
The word paradigm comes from the Greek root paradigma, meaning pattern, the pattern we expect to see, or the mental image of the way things are. We see everything through the perspective of our own paradigm. What we see, our paradigms, determine what we do, which in turn determines what we get. And unless we consciously stand apart from and examine our paradigms, we might never see that perhaps many of them are distorted, short-sighted, or just flat out wrong. I remember a mini paradigm shift I experienced one Sunday morning on a subway in New York City. People were sitting very quietly, some reading, some resting with their eyes closed. Suddenly, a man and his children entered the subway car. The children ran yelling through the car, throwing things, grabbing people's newspapers. Their father sat down near me and closed his eyes and did nothing. I felt irritated. I could not believe he would let his children run wild like that. After a few minutes of patience and restraint, I turned to him and said, "Sir, your children are really disturbing a lot of people. I wonder if you could control them just a little more."
Yeah, you're right. I should do something. But we just came from the hospital where their mother died about an hour ago, and I guess they don't know how to handle it. Guess I don't know how to handle it.
Can you imagine how I felt at that moment? My paradigm shifted. Suddenly I saw things differently. And because I saw differently, I thought differently. I felt differently. I acted differently. My irritation vanished. Compassion flowed freely. I wanted to help instead of criticizing and complaining. Once you see things as they really are, you'll think, feel, and act differently, and you'll do it automatically, spontaneously. If you want to make minor changes in your life, work on your behavior. But if you want to make significant quantum breakthroughs, work on your paradigms.
Paradigms are so powerful because they really shape the way that we see the world. And the way that we see the world in turn will ultimately impact the habits that we have and therefore our family's culture, right? And so it's important for us to examine where our paradigms or our views come from. All of us have our own set of lenses that we wear when we see the world. And it's important for us to understand that those come from our experiences, where you were raised, how you were raised, the family you grew up in, other people's views, TV, social media, movies, fear, like all of those things come together to shape our worldview. And like I said, our worldview, the way that we see the world, that directly impacts the things that we do, the practices that we have, which impact the results that we get and almost reinforce our paradigm. So if there's anything that you ever want to change, if you have results that you want to change, we always want to start with our paradigms, the way that we're seeing things, to make lasting changes. Because if we just change the practices, it's almost like, if you've ever tried to, maybe go on a diet or something or lose weight or whatever, like maybe you're like, I'm going to meal prep every day. And You do that for a little and you get results, but because you never change the way you see health and fitness, you eventually probably fizzle out with some of those practices, right? Or at least I'm speaking from my personal experience, maybe not anybody else's. But Dr. Covey says to make minor changes in your life, you work on changing your behavior, but those real breakthroughs are on how you change, as on changing your paradigms. Now, if you think about this from the lens of a parent or a caregiver, right? I'm wondering, and you don't have to say anything if you don't want to, but maybe in the chat, is anybody consciously parenting their children differently than they were parented? I know I am. I love my parents dearly. And also, there are some things that I am really consciously trying to do differently. And it really involves me because it's ongoing, changing the way that I see behaviors in my child and things like that. Absolutely. Yeah. And so that right there, that was a great video. Are you able to share the link? I will find a way to. I don't know how to do that right off the top of my head without like access stuff, but I will find a way to. Yeah, that's real talk right there. And a great example of that, yes, absolutely, is this, right? I'm sure we've seen things like this. In the chat real quick, what do you guys see? This is always fun for me. A man with a big nose, a woman's face, a guy with a trombone, a woman's face. So I think point made, right, is that the way that you see something will be unique to you and only to you. So that's important to keep in mind, and that our paradigms are all connected within our families. So if you think about your paradigms like a pair of glasses, even in your own family, you're going to all wear different glasses. And so that's important to keep in mind too, that your paradigms can and probably will be different than your own children, and then maybe a partner that you might have. All of that is important to keep in mind. So you're here for the 7 habits of highly effective families, and you're probably wondering, it's been 30 minutes and she hasn't even talked about a habit. Let's get into this first one, okay? And again, today we're going to be talking about habits 1, 2, and 3. Those habits are the ones that have to do with us, right? And it starts with being proactive and influencing your family from the inside out. And so when we talk about being proactive, this first habit, it's kind of the foundation of all of the other ones. It really gives the strength for all the other ones. So just as an example for what this habit is, imagine that this water bottle right here, and it's still water, no bubbles, there's no tricks here, it's just regular still water. And then this is just a soda bottle, okay? So imagine that these 2 bottles are 2 people, separate people, and they're both driving home, trying to get home during our lovely rush hour traffic. They've had a really stressful day. Maybe customers were angry at them, or the internet went down, or they were yelled at for something that wasn't even their fault. And on top of that, maybe when you're coming home, perhaps you have children to take care of when you come home, and you get cut off on the highway, and it gets really ugly on the highway, right? So if you think about these 2 bottles, and again, imagine all of that stress, imagine they're being shaken up, they're being agitated and agitated and agitated. When one of these bottles gets home, what's going to happen to, let's say, the soda bottle? When the soda bottle gets home, the soda bottle is going to explode, right? It's just been building up and building up and building up. The water bottle, on the other hand, can go through any of those stresses and still will come home, will be opened, and will not explode. And I don't know what kind of families y'all grew up in, but that is something that's been really important to me personally, is I want to be the water. I want to, when I come home and I'm with my family, that they are not getting those other things that have happened to me. And what we call that is being a proactive person, whereas the soda bottle is kind of reactive. They react to the things that happen to them. And let's time out for a minute and say that nobody is a perfect person or perfect adult. And sometimes we will be the soda bottle. But my mantra, my personal mantra that I say to myself, is to be the water. Be the water, be the water. How can I be the water for myself? How can I be the water for my daughter, my husband, etc.? Now, all of our habits have kind of, and remember we talked about paradigms, right? Our lenses. They have these common paradigms and these common practices, but then we have these more effective paradigms and effective practices, okay? So on the left, we sort of have these like ideas that circumstances determine our happiness. And so as a result, we get angry, we say things we regret, we maybe blame others, we try to fix them. We want to shift and live more of our time on the right side so that we are responsible for our happiness and we do these things. We pause, think, and choose, and we focus on our circle of influence. And so today we're going to go through these two practices here, give you some tools to do these things. And I feel like if there's one thing that you could really take away from today, it has to be one of these two practices. And I think you could use it like tonight. If anybody's kids are still awake after this, you could probably use it tonight. And so we'll start with just this example here. We like to use this phrase. It's called carrying your own weather. And it's kind of another term for being proactive or being responsible for your own thoughts and feelings. And another timeout here. Of course, there are things that you do not have control over that can impact your behavior or your reactions. The point here is, what tools can I use to increase the power I do feel over those things? I don't want work to control the way I react to my spouse or my partner or my child, right? So that's what this is really about. It's not to negate that horrible, awful, negative things do happen. That's not negating that. This is saying, and what can I do about it? Okay. All right.
Monday morning, and it's raining. A gray, melancholy day. On a day like this, maybe we can be excused for feeling gray and melancholy ourselves. We get into a mood, and the whole day seems to go badly. Don't you feel better when the weather outside is great? Well, what if you could carry your own weather within you? What about the social world we live in? Don't you feel better when you're treated better? That's being reactive to what we could call the social weather, the social culture. When you carry your weather with you, you can choose to be consistent regardless of how people treat you. That's what it means to be proactive. Being reactive is the opposite of being proactive, not taking responsibility for our own life. Habit 1 is based on the principle that your life is the result of your own decisions, not your conditions, not what's happening around you. That's why habit 1 is so foundational, so basic. Unless you practice habit 1, you can never practice the other habits of highly effective people. Years ago, I was doing research in a library in Hawaii. While thumbing through a book, I came across an idea that changed my whole outlook. The author said something like this: between what happens to us, that is the stimulus, and our response is a space. In that space lies our power and our freedom to choose our response. And in those choices lie our growth and our happiness. This insight sunk deep into my heart. Even in the midst of challenging circumstances, we have this exhilarating power to choose how we will respond. Several years ago, I was making a presentation on this subject of proactivity, and a woman stood up in the middle of my speech and started to give a speech on her own, spontaneously. She was filled with explosive learning and excitement. You could see in her eyes, her gestures, her body language. And then she sensed the inappropriateness of what she was doing. She sat back down. I could hardly wait until the break to talk to her. "What happened to you?" I asked. She shared her story. She said, "I'm the full-time nurse to an extremely miserable man. He doesn't even acknowledge me, let alone show me any form of appreciation. She went on to explain that this elderly man, entrusted to her care, was absolutely miserable and took his misery out on her. She was becoming more and more depressed and hated the thought of going to work each day and facing this irritable man. Then she said something to me. For you to stand up there and suggest that I am choosing to be miserable was almost too much. But then, listening to you, I suddenly realized that I do choose to be miserable. Before, I believed I didn't choose it. He made me. But then I realized how dependent I am. I'd given my power over myself to him and his miserable behavior. As I thought about what you were saying, she said, I realized I had the power to choose and felt like I had been let out of prison. That's why I stood up. I could not contain myself. I just can't tell you what that means. This feeling of freedom is almost overwhelming. We have the power and the freedom to choose, to create our own weather each day. As Fulton J. Sheen once said, each of us makes his own weather, determines the color of the skies in the emotional universe which he inhabits.
And so again, I and no one here is going to tell you that bad things or bad conditions don't happen to people. Like, that does happen to people, and for a lot of times it will impact how you feel and your behavior. What we're talking about here is how can we increase the times where we don't let that happen, so that we can have being a thermostat versus a thermometer. I love that, Nick. That's a really, really good analogy. And so the nurse was saying she had felt like she'd been let out of prison because why? She realized that she ultimately can choose. Like, she's not going to let this miserable man control her attitude. And what we like to say, even to kids, right, if you're thinking about your children, is, we don't want our kids to let bullies or social media determine how they feel about themselves, because you're giving your power away. And we don't want to give our power away to anybody. We have that power. We call that the freedom to choose. So between what happens to us, we call that a stimulus. So that horrible negative thing that happens and how we react to us is this space. And that space is where we have this idea of our freedom to choose. So the whole idea of being proactive is that within that space between a stimulus and response, you have this ability to choose how you're going to respond. And it's really when we think about reactive behavior, when you don't, right? You let the stimulus kind of crash into your response. And again, no one is perfect. I can think about probably 5 times I was like this today. Again, my daughter's 1.5. Her favorite word is no. Favorite word is no. And so this has been really helpful for me, is this highly effective practice of pause, think, and choose. So anytime something is happening to you, just stop, pause, think about what are some of your options, and then choose the best response. And it sounds so simple, but it's actually something that you really do need to kind of practice over and over again. And so one thing, maybe we could do this in the chat, if anybody doesn't mind, maybe think of a situation where you tend to be reactive, and maybe kind of think about these 3 things. How will you pause? What are some choices, and which choice might you choose? I could give you another one. My daughter all of a sudden is scared of taking a bath, like as if she didn't take one every day for 17 months, and woke up one day and she won't take a bath. And it is just every night, every night we do the whole little song and dance. And so we pause. I don't get frustrated. Some of the choices that we make are, I get in with her, I give her an option of a shower, or we don't do it. And sometimes I choose that one based off of her responses. But I've stopped just getting frustrated and trying to force her in, because that's not healthy for anybody. It's not. So I don't know if anybody else can relate to something like that. Your kids are probably a little bit older than mine. In the morning when we're getting ready for school and bed. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it can feel like one thing after another. And then sometimes I find it almost coming with me even after it's over, right? Like I've done the daycare drop off and I'm still like, oh my goodness. And I don't want to be like that, right? I want to not let that event happen to me. Oh yeah, no, teeth brushing, it's like, you know, you would think I'm trying to kidnap her or something. I can relate to all of these. And so again, nothing groundbreaking here, but it really is this idea that you do get to choose how you want to respond to this, and it won't be perfect every time. But I think the pause is what's most important. Just don't say anything and don't do anything before you can kind of move into that. And really, it's this, the key to your family culture is how you respond to the one who tests you the most. My husband likes to say, like, I, as the mom, for whatever reason, he's like, I feel like you set the tone for the whole family. However you're feeling is like almost how everyone else is feeling. And I don't take that lightly. Yeah, it's true. And sometimes I think I know it and I'm like, everyone's going to have a bad day today. No, I'm just kidding. Hopefully y'all are laughing. I can't see any of your faces, but I do hope that we're getting some laughs out of this. So here's the other part we talked about: pausing and choosing your response, but also this idea of your circle of concern and your circle of influence. There are things that you do not have control over. We know that. We all watch the news. We all know, we know. So let's look at this diagram for a minute. So an impactful way to identify and focus on what we can control in our lives is by thinking about it this way. The outside circle in green, this represents everything that concerns us in our life, but you cannot influence or control it. You have no control over it. The weather, the horrible things that are going on in the world. A lot of that is we are concerned about it, but we have no control. This inner circle represents the things that do concern us too, but we have influence or some control over. So the things that we can control, you know, you have control over all of your family members. No, but you can certainly influence them, right? So when we think about it this way, the only thing that you truly have 100% control over is yourself. And that's where proactive people focus their significant energy and time. As you increase this part, you increase the time you spend on the things that you can influence, naturally, your outer circle will shrink. You will have less time to think of the things that are outside of your circle of concern. And that is huge. That is huge. So this is what I was mentioning here, right? The more we think about those outside forces, it shrinks the amount of time that you have to think about the things that you do have control over. And in reverse, the more that we focus on what you can influence or can control, you're going to see your influence within your family expand, trust increases, and you have less time to focus on those outside concerns. Okay. This is what we call taking an inside-out approach. You become kind of a leader and a powerful force in establishing your family's culture. And so again, habit one really is this key to all the other habits. And it's sort of like a decision to become that force in your own life. Deciding that you want to be the agent of change in your family. In whatever way that is, it really does start with you and yourself and how we respond and how we spend our time thinking and acting based off of our concern or our influence. So we spent a lot of time on habit one. Let's talk about habit two. Habit two is called begin with the end in mind. And it's really about bringing a vision and a purpose to your family. And I could talk about this one all day. But to get us started, we'll just play a little bit of a game. So amuse me or humor me if you would like. Here's the first game. I'm going to ask you just in 30 seconds, I want you to look at the screen and find the numbers 1 through 54 in order. And I'm going to set the timer for now, and I'm going to see how high you can get. Okay. If you need it, on your marks, get set, go. Try to find 1, then 2, then 3, etc. Okay, and I'm going to stop you and I'm going to tell you it wasn't 30 seconds. It was more like 20, but time goes really slow on Zoom. So I want to stop there. What's the highest we got to? How high did we get? Okay, 13, 11. 6. It seems like a simple task, right? Like, why didn't we go any higher? Let's try it a different way. Oh, let me see. It was tough. I know it was tough. Let's try it a different way. Let me see if this helps you a little bit better. Try now. All right, you can stop. I won't ask you to say it. We'll try one more round. For this next round, notice that I'm going to give you the same grid pattern, but I'm also going to tell you this. There's a pattern to the grid. So inside the grid, if you go in order, you will find number 1 in the first grid, number 2 in the second, 3 in the third, and then 4 is down here. Do you guys kind of see that yellow arrow? And then the pattern repeats itself. Okay. So I'm going to set the timer again, and let's just see how far you can get this time. Do y'all understand that? I think you do. Follow the arrow and repeat. Okay. Go ahead and go. All right. How far did we get this time? A little bit further? You're supposed to get a full minute for all of this, but yay! Okay, definitely better, definite progress. That's a good thing. And why did maybe that one become easier? I told you the pattern and you had an idea of where you were going, right? Like you had this flow of where you were supposed to go. And all of this, you had support, yeah, the guide, all of that to tell us, what does this have to do with habit 2, Kayla? Oh, get to the point. Here's the point. Remember, every habit has these paradigms and they have these practices. So the way we see things and what we do. Habit 2, we want to live on the right. We want to define our purposes and our values by planning with purpose and living by some kind of like a family mission statement. So let's talk about those 2 practices. Planning with a purpose. How can a family begin with the end in mind? Oh my goodness, just looking at those things on the screen, it might stress anybody out. It definitely stresses me out. But when you look at those things, right, as a family, there's so many things that we need to make plans for. What's really important is making sure that as we plan, we're considering our values and what's important to our families, the beliefs and ideas that are important to you and your family. That's how we at FranklinCovey define that. And so a tool to help you as a family perhaps do this is what we call family mission statement. So when we explore our values as a family, like what's important to us, what are the things that, like, ground rules, however you want to phrase it, we want to take some time to be able to create a family mission statement. And we won't have time to do that today, but I will draw your attention to, in the participant guide on page 26, there's sample mission statements that you might want to take home to maybe do as a family together, maybe on like an evening, a Sunday evening or something like that. And think about the importance of who would need to be part of the process. Why? Where could you post this? What point would this show? And we'll talk about that, what the point of all of this is at the end of this video. Okay, so think about your own family and maybe what a mission statement would be. Like this idea of no empty chairs. I mean, that for someone who wants a large family, like that's a lot. So anyways, let's watch this and let's think about why this is important. And so just to kind of close out that section about habit 2, I think really what got me when I was thinking about this one is, for those of you who just joined, I have a 1.5-year-old and I'm pregnant with my second. And someone asked me to start thinking about when my kids, assuming that they have their own family, when they tell their own kids about their upbringing and their life, like, what do I want them to say? And that was really powerful for me, because it really did make me think about having to define how I wanted to act now to be able to have that, to have the response that I would want my kids to say to their own kids. That really hit home for me. So for the sake of time, I'm going to give you this idea. You could also do this as a way, like a family collage instead. Some kind of like pictures and maybe just short phrases, but something that's prominent and out there, I think, is a great way to have everybody on the same page about what our family is and really, really ground us in what our families are important. Our last habit for today is habit 3, which is putting first things first. This is one, man, I wish we had more time, because goodness, it's all around making time for family time. And if you ever feel like you can't just do it all, you are not alone. I don't think we were made to be doing all of the things that we are doing. And maybe you feel like you're often saying no to things, like a request from a friend to go do something. You don't have time. I have to say no to this. I have to say no to this. And sometimes that can feel really difficult. And so we know that you have to decide your highest priorities, and then you have to have courage to say no to those other things. So habit 3 has us consider what we call our big rock. And goodness, this paradigm here tells us that we nurture our most important relationships by making time for what matters the most. Okay. So for the sake of time, I really do. I know some of you are going to have to sign off. So I'm going to ask maybe Molly, I don't know if you don't mind, or actually either of you. I know that there is a feedback form that they would love for y'all to fill out to give your feedback about our session for today. And as they put that in the chat, I am going to play our Big Rocks video. Yes, there's a link somewhere. There it is. Yep, there it is. And I'm going to play this video, and I know that we end at 7, so I will wrap it up right after this video, but I really want to make sure that we talk about this, because I think this is huge for families.
Hey, what do we got here?
This is part 2 of First Things First, a grand experiment.
Hey, Jelly Bean!
Nah, this is your life. This bowl is your life. This is 1 week of your life, and your job is to get all the important things of your life to fit in with all of the day-to-day activities. Go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so this is everything I do in a week, right?
Yeah,
all
right
the stuff.
there.
Okay. Family, right? That's important.
Super important. And you can't go over the edge.
Okay, so I got to make it fit without going over?
Right there.
Okay, well, big career opportunity. I
Oh,
would.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Worked very hard at that. Coaching, right? I need coaching. That's a small one.
I respect that about you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Put that in there.
Okay.
All right. Well, I love basketball.
Okay.
I like to play basketball.
Yeah.
That's not in there. And this is me time.
Yeah.
I need me time.
Well, you got to rest, and you like watching rap battles, and okay.
What is
So whatever doesn't fit underneath the brim, you gotta take out. Like
So-
you just can't have it.
So basketball and me time is not in there.
Yeah, so that's like what, half of your life?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I need these in there.
I know. Well then you're gonna need to do something differently.
How do you mean?
You're just gonna need to rearrange it. You're gonna have to shift your priorities, right?
Hey, Clark.
Yeah. Thank you. So let's take the big things out.
Okay.
Okay. Remember, what's this episode called again?
First things first.
Right. Okay. So, what are you going to do differently?
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna put the big things in first.
Yeah.
Okay. Family in there.
Yep.
Pickup ball, that's what I was, me time, that's what I was missing the
Yep.
first time. Put these in there. There we go. Okay. There you
And
go.
then now here's all the little things.
Yep.
Here's the rest of your daily activities. Can you make
Okay.
them fit?
Let's see here.
Can you shake it up a bit? Oh, yeah. Yeah, nice. Oh, I think we can that. All right. And well, we're
Well,
over the brim.
Yeah, it's still over.
Yeah, so check this out.
But what about all these? This is me brushing my teeth and showering and getting a haircut and then checking blogs and vlogs.
Yeah, but those things are all in here. You have your hygiene and you have your Snapchat and you have all those things in here. It's just they're not taking up the whole space anymore. You're not responding to every text immediately,
Right.
right? It's just at the end of the week, what are you going to regret not having?
The big rocks.
Right. You don't want to sacrifice your family for your Snapchat.
That's true.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just prioritizing the big things instead of the little things.
Exactly.
That I'm already doing, but just not in an abundance.
So what are the big things in your life?
Yeah. And which one do you want in your bowl?
Prioritize. First things first.
First things first.
All right, so obviously our time together, it went so fast. It's already 7 o'clock. I just will debrief briefly. We've got to put the big rocks in first. What are the big rocks? Those are the things that matter the most. Your family, your health, a big career opportunity, whatever it is, you have to put those things into a schedule first. And then the other smaller things come in after that. And the things that don't fit, they don't fit. And I know that's a huge, what do you mean those things have to get done? That's a paradigm shift that you might need to have, is that sometimes they just won't get done.